Okay, good morning, guys. Let's start. Okay, just to get ourselves oriented so that you know where we're all at here, I'm going to be giving you all kinds of stuff on presentation stuff today. So I'm hoping all our presentation people are here. Just so you can see where we're at. Today we're doing IEEE tables and charts and graphs and presentation stuff. What's due this week? And that is going to be by Saturday. Don't forget your progress report number 2. That's the formal one, the one with the the headlines and all the stuff and the Gantt chart and all that good stuff. You can find samples of that in the sequence 3 if you want to go up there and see what the student samples are. If you're happy with your grade from the first progress report number 1, that's the formal one, right? You can take that and use the same form and update everything so that it's up to date as of Saturday. So don't forget that you can add in headings if you need, like headings that don't, that weren't in the first one. You can add sections or delete sections that are irrelevant. Make sure that I can easily see in this Gantt chart how far along everybody is, how many hours. If there's any issues that you happen to see, like you happen to see somebody has a lot less hours than somebody else, make sure you address that in the text of the memo so that I can see, oh, that's why, because they're going to be doing this next week or because they were gone, or make sure that you just let me know what's going on there so I'm good with that. So that's what's due by Saturday midnight. Okay? Now, today I want a quick memo from project people. Okay, I want a quick memo today just saying this is what we did, this is where we're at. Easy, okay? That can be just an email, right? So what's due by next week? So this is what you got to figure out this week. This is the rough draft of the actual report and the presentation slides, or PowerPoint, or however you guys are going to put your stuff up here to talk. So in class next week, there should be something that the group is looking at and able to say, okay, this looks good, this needs work, we need more resources, this IEEE needs work, this revision, whatever that case may be, that should be something here for next week. Everybody in the group that is here next week will get full credit for that rough draft, and you're working with it. The other thing that should be in rough draft form is anything having to do with the presentation, okay? So that you guys can look at it and go, this looks good, or this needs work, or what else do we need here? How are we going to make this work? People who are giving the presentation may be different than people creating the presentation slides, so we want to make sure that you're all on the same track. Okay? The following week, you'll be doing the entire practice presentation of a run-through, right? So you should be at that point, should have all the slides ready, should have everything ready to go so that you can actually do a run-through, or maybe even 2. Some groups need multiple ones to make sure that it works. So at that point, the presentation slides all need to be ready to go, and you need to be able to time it and see. Okay. Then, of course, we've got the week 15. We've got the presentations to do. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at. It's for those of you who are starting to think through, okay, what things are still in progress? What do we need to work on and stuff. So I want to walk you through. Some stuff to help you, especially those of you creating the presentations. Okay, so let me see. I'm going to share some application screen for you guys. Okay, well, let me pull up a couple different things. Now, I'm going to show you where I'm finding all this stuff. In the sequence 3, you're going to find these 3 folders. They have sample progress reports, sample group finals, and sample presentations. This sample presentation is actually a recording of the presentations done. So I'm going to pull up one of those and just kind of show you what it looks like. If I can find it there. Okay. So this is from last semester. And it just kind of goes through the whole hour and 20 minutes. You can kind of screen through it. If you are the one doing the presentation, creating the presentation, you might want to just watch through, skim through parts of it just to see what other people do. What does it look like? So I'm going to use you guys in the back row as our thought processes here. So this is the first one. It pops up. This is how it looks. Can you guys read it all? Okay, so pretty good. That's one thing you have to keep in mind. If you are the people who are creating the report is intended for me to hold in my hand, right? or maybe on a screen, so it's in small print. When you're transferring that information to the big screen, a whole different thing, right? How many bad presentations have we all watched? Lots of them, right? And you guys don't want to be the ones doing the bad presentations, but when you are doing it for the first time, there's stuff that you have to think about. One of them is the background color and the font, right? Make sure that the background color and the font are really different, so there's a lot of contrast. If they're close in color or shade, it's really hard to see. Make sure that you use a little bit of color. Sometimes the color is useful just to show stuff, right? So I'm just gonna go forward. Okay. So, can you guys read this one up here? No, you can't. Now, if it were on the computer in front of me, when they created it, it looks fine, right? You can read it. But you're keeping in mind that the people in the back row need to be able to read it too. Okay? So I want to stop for just a moment and talk about IEEE. Whenever you have pictures, charts, graphs of any kind, there's going to be three components potentially that you might want to think about. One of them is going to be a label of some kind. You can see that one says figure 1. You can call it chart 1, graph 1, picture 1, whatever. You can even have pictures and charts and graphs. Just label them in some way so that you can refer to it and people go, okay. So these may be the same pictures that are in your report. They might be different. They should still be on the same topic, of course, but it might be slightly different, and that's okay. So that's number one, component number 1, is to have a label. Second is this thing in the middle, and that's just a description of what it is. Okay, so label it, and then tell me what it is. Okay? If you have created the items here, which could be a picture, maybe you went out and took a picture of something, make sure that that is clear there, okay? So that it's clear that you created the data. If, when you're doing senior projects, you have created the data because you're testing something and you have a chart that you have created the data, you're collecting that, make sure that that is clear. I created this. If you're using like CAD, for instance, and again, I'm talking about now, but also future stuff too. Make sure that you are saying that this is something you created, okay? So that it's clear it came from you or it didn't come from you. Now, if it did not come from you, which is mostly going to be the case for this particular presentation, there needs to be a third component, and that's this little Ieee reference number, right? That's the in-text citation. Where did it come from? So if you did create it, then it's not going to be there. If you didn't, then I need to find out where did it come from, because you're giving credit to somebody else, right? So a lot of times it's going to be a picture that you got from Google somewhere. Okay, where did I find it? Oh, source number 1. I can go to the end. So the very last slide of your presentation is going to be a references slide. Okay, so everybody will have that the same, unless you decide you want to have like a blank one at the end that just says questions or something like that, and that's cool. Okay, if you want to take questions, your group does not have to take questions. That's up to you guys. But those 3 things, any questions about what should be labeled on all charts, graphs, visuals of any kind? Okay. It's the same thing you would do for an in-text citation. So, for instance, if there were something over here that was like a statistic, 25% of people have mental health, then you might want to put a citation over here too. So I should see in-text citations both in the report itself, but also in the presentation stuff. Okay? Now, that's really useful for you. Let's say you're giving a presentation at work someday in the future, whether it's online or live or wherever you are. Lots of times you'll get that sort of thing where somebody in the audience will be like, I'd really like to have that. Can you email it to me? Yep, so if you've got all your ducks in a row, it's all cited, and you've got your references in it, really easy to do so, right? Yep, let me email it to you afterwards. Okay? So that's one of the really useful stuff of this. Now, one of the things I want to point out that a lot of students get really wrong with the presentation, a lot of people in the business too. So I'm speaking, where should the audience be looking? Depends on what's going on here, but the presentation is me. This over here is just supposed to add to my presentation. This isn't the focus. The presentation, the information I'm providing is the focus, right? So if this over here is distracting from that, then problematic, right? So how could it distract? Well, one, I could be standing here reading it with my back to you, right? People do that sometimes, right? Because it's like, I'm using this as my thing to read from. No, 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 no. I should be up here talking to you. So that means that sometimes you can have, like, if you feel like, if this works for you, you can have a PowerPoint that has little notes at the bottom, right? So that's one of those, if you're standing over here and you're playing the PowerPoint, there's a place to put notes. But that's only if you're the kind of person that likes to stand over here. If you have multiple people that are giving the presentation, or you're like me and you like to walk around, that gets really awkward because I'm always running back over here, or I'm using my, port thing to make it switch. There's technical issues, right? So it is totally fine to have a note card or something, or use your phone and put notes on. Have notes in front of you. Just don't read them, right? I don't want to be doing this. We want to be looking at the audience. So that means you guys got to practice, right? It means you're going to have to practice and go, okay, if we have 4 different people doing this, we need to see, like, what are you going to say? And what are you going to say? And are you ready to say it? And does that sound right? So this practice is going to take a little bit of work to make sure that it sounds good and looks good. The other thing is, if you have too many words up here, people are like, one, they're like trying to read it, right? And what are they doing when they're reading it? They're not listening to you or whoever's speaking. So that means it's a distraction. So this up here should be, the font that you have over here should be fairly minimal, right? The picture should be, in fact, I would make this one even bigger. Make a giant picture, a little bit of font, right? So people are listening to you, they're hearing what you have to say, and then they're using that as a way of reinforcing the information. That's the way a PowerPoint should be used really well. Okay, let me scroll up just to show a couple more here. Is that font easier to read? Yeah. Is it big enough? Do you have to squint at all? Okay, so notice this is pretty good. It's black on and white. The easiest one of all by all kinds of studies is actually the opposite way, white on the back and black. Okay, so the easiest thing and the highest contrast. Just make sure that there is a lot of contrast. Does this one still work? Yeah, that still works pretty good, right? It's makes it bigger, has a little bit of color, right? So that works too. Notice that this is real simple. Notice you have an in-text citation here, right? So you got some statistics, and then I'm telling you where do they find them. If you want to find it, source number 10 at the end, right? And again, this is really well labeled. So you can still make this picture bigger. But this is a way just to say, especially if you have numbers and you've got somebody up here that's kind of reeling off a bunch of numbers, 25% here, it's 30% here, whatever. It's nice to have those up here so people can hear them and see them, right? Because it's like a reinforcement thing. So that works pretty well. Okay. Questions are up there. So like that one is good. Did you know this? Questions are good to sort of help focus. All right. What about this one? Can you guys in the back read this? Yeah, Steve's like, no. This is an example of one that could be better as far as contrast, right? It probably worked fine on the computer when I was working with it, but it doesn't work as fine when you're in a big giant room. One, it's a little bit small, right? And two, it's just the contrast is not really well. So think about those kinds of things as you're creating this stuff, especially if you're the one creating the slides. Remember that it should just go along with the stuff that people are saying. So you're going to have some sort of a script-ish, right? What are we going to say? By the way, you don't have to say every single thing that's in your report in the presentation. The presentation, they go together, but you don't have to have every single thing. So you guys can pick and choose what are the most important and interesting things that we want to convey to our audience here. Let's make sure we have slides that talk about them, and let's make it happen, right? Okay. Keep in mind, what's the purpose of the presentation and the report? Convince what your freshmen people coming in, and perhaps their parents, that whatever you're talking about is of interest to them. So make sure that that's in there, right? Sometimes at the end of your presentation or your paper, there's what we call the CTA, and that's this call to action. Sometimes there's one of those. kind of like what we did with the elevator speech. At the end of the elevator speech, you wanted to ask some sort of question, right? Do you want a card? Can I give you my number? Can I call you? Whatever, something so that you're engaging them. Same thing can happen with something like this. Perhaps you have convinced them of whatever topic is really of interest. Is there something you want them to do about it? Now that they've listened to you, do you want them just to wander off and start thinking about lunch, or do you want them to go, hey, maybe I should really do something about this thing? Is there a phone number or a website or a thing that you want them to do or whatever it is? Okay, so think about that at the end of, it's a good way to wrap things up. Okay, see if there's anything else. Oh, I'm gonna scroll up here. Oh, to this one. Charts and graphs. A lot of times when people are doing presentations, they flash up like a thing like this and kind of real quickly say something like, here's a chart and graph that illustrates exactly what I'm talking about. And then they just kind of go on, right? If you're going to put up something like this, make sure you have somebody sort of pausing to go, okay, let me talk you through what this talks about, what this means. Make sure that you are explaining, right? What are all these little graphs and charts and stuff mean before going on? Again, this could be a little bit bigger, right? I recommend bigger stuff. It's easier to see, it's easier to comprehend if it's bigger. And we don't need a ton of font anyway, right? Because you're talking. So, all right, well, more importantly here, I'm going to scroll over to this. Okay, so this is a piece of their podcast. They decided to include a couple minutes of their podcast as part of it. You can do that too as part of your presentation. Here's a tip, and this is true not only for this computer, but for any computer ever in the future. If you are creating a PowerPoint and you embed something, a sound, a video, whatever, always make sure that you include someplace easy to copy and paste the link for it. Because occasionally what will happen, and I don't even always know why, somebody will be up here and they'll click on it, embedded, and it won't play. For whatever reason, maybe it's how it was put in there. So sometimes you just have to go, hold on a second, I'm going to copy that link, and I'm going to open a Google thing, put it in there, and play it. And that works just fine. So just make sure that you have a little bit of backup. You always want to have backups for all of these things. So also, you don't want to have, well, I know a lot of your groups are doing stuff in the cloud, so it's out there somewhere anyway. But you don't want to have only one person have the slideshow or one person have the report. Make sure that it is multiple places in case computer crash or whatever happens. Things like this do happen, right? So have a backup plan. Have it on a travel drive. Send it in your email. I always do 3 things with anything big. I have it on my computer where I'm working on it. I put it on my travel drive, and I email it to myself. So that way I have access to it in lots of different places and functions, right? Because I have had lots of students that have had bad things happen, right? But one student last semester dropped their computer in the toilet. That was bad, So, these things do happen, right? I don't even want to contemplate how that happened either, but so it's a good idea to include stuff like that, but make sure you got a backup plan. Okay. So, I'm just going to scroll ahead, see if there's anything else. There's a references. Don't forget your references slide is the very last one. This is the one exception to the small field thing. Your references can be very small because that's really intended to illustrate your credibility, but also then if somebody says, hey, can you email it to me or can I look at it? Yeah, got it all right there, right? Okay. So any questions about stuff like, how should I put this together? What is it for, right? Simpler is often better. Some people are good at making the fun stuff. You can make your PowerPoints, do all kinds of cool stuff. Just remember that you don't want any of the cool stuff to distract from the information. That's the real key there, okay? Okay, so this stuff is in here in sequence 3 in the sample presentations if you want to just skim through it or play with it or whatever, okay? Yes, you can improve on those, and every semester students look at past ones and go, I like this part, I can do better. So every semester they tend to get a little bit better as you guys see stuff around. So feel free to improvise new stuff. I also wanted to point out this. This is actually in week 10 or week 12, which is where we are now. And this is in the helpful section. this is just sort of a template for the tables and figures if you need to see a table or figure, or if you need a quick reminder about IEEE and what the form, what do the headings look like and that sort of thing. You will see that there's lots of versions of IEEE. In fact, like every conference that's out there that uses IEEE has a little tweak that's changed. So you're going to see that not everything is exactly like this. This is a professional one though, but sometimes you'll see like this one has the headings in all caps. Sometimes you'll see that not in all caps. So there's minor variations and stuff like that. So, but this is one here for you to take a look at if you want to see it. The other thing that's in the helpful stuff for the week, rid of that too, you guys have in front of you. So you can look at it now if you want, if you haven't. You should have this graph chart. You are going to be doing this anonymously, preferably. So what I want you to do in your group is, before you get into the whole group dynamic, you start thinking through all the stuff that you need to finish before next week. I want everybody to take this, but without putting their name on it. Okay. So oftentimes with the group stuff, you have, especially you have extroverts and introverts, and some then you have people that are halfway in between, right? There's often some sort of group dynamics thing where they aren't talking to each other as well as they should be. Sometimes extroverts, like, they don't like silence, right? So they want to talk through everything and make sure that something's happening. Sometimes introverts are like, hold on a minute, I need to think this through before I talk. And so there's sometimes a dynamic issue where you might be missing some things from your introverts. Or you might think like the extroverts would be like, I wish they would say more. And the introverts were like, I wish they'd be quiet more so I could, So we have some sort of dynamics that we need to discuss as a group so that you're getting the full amount of information from each other. So this is one way to do it. So what you're going to do is go through this, and then when you're finished, sort of as anonymously as you can, hand all of them upside down to your project manager. Project manager, mix them all up, throw them on the ground if you want, whatever you want. Pick them back up, and then do a quick tally of everybody's stuff to figure out where are the group strengths and weaknesses that perhaps you guys are not familiar with. You can see that you can add these up. So here's the things that you're going to do. We work together to a very little extent, to a great extent, to a little, to a very little, to a little, to a great, to a very great. So how are we doing on this? There is group concern for quality performance. We share high performance expectations. We take our group work, some take our group work too lightly. Some members with good ideas don't speak up. And you're like, why do you not speak up? This is a good way to get yourself to start talking about some of the stuff. Yeah.
So the project managers do it too, or?
Yes, project managers also do it too. I want everybody to do it and then mix them all up and then figure it out. Yeah. Need one more?
And then, yeah, we also.
Okay. There's one more. And then I will print out more if you need one. There you go. So
we fill it out.
everybody grab a pen. Yeah, everybody fill it out yourselves. And that's the first thing you're going to talk about. I need to have this information about like what's happened in the group dynamics in the email that the project manager sent me today. So talk about it. It says, is there anything we need to figure this out? Okay, so that's the first thing you do. The rest of the time is yours after that to go figure out what you need to do for next week. You can go anywhere you want to. You can go outside if you want to. You can go get pizza, whatever you guys did last time. I don't care. Just make sure this one's done and figured out first, and then send me a quick email today. Progress report number 2 by Saturday. Okay. Okay. You're free, and I will stop recording for now.